there's one thing we know about the Doctor, it's that they're the man who never would. Well, allegedly. For someone who supposedly doesn't like guns and supposedly abhors violence, there have been quite a lot of murderous acts throughout the Doctor's history. So let's take a look at 10 times the Doctor has actually killed. Number 10. Disintegrating an Ood, the Doctor's wife. In a weird and, as it turns out, very fun turn of events, the Doctor's wife sees the TARDIS's spirit enter the body of a woman named Idris. Cue a bunch of Moffat-y jokes left, right and centre in a surprisingly powerful story that allows the Doctor and his most faithful companion to connect like never before. With no means of transportation, the Doctor is forced to build a brand new TARDIS using any random parts he can find. And he jets off to save Amy and Rory, who are being hunted by a sinister Ood called Nephew. For a moment you think the Doctor is about to make a heroic entrance where he'll somehow deactivate Nephew peacefully. That is, before the TARDIS just materialises right on top of him, completely and utterly destroying the poor bloke and spreading his atoms throughout the very air everyone's currently breathing. Aside from the distressing fact that the Doctor has canonically snorted an Ood, it's actually quite sad that he absolutely obliterated a member of a species he's shown a strong affinity for in the past. Granted, this one was a lot more evil than the peaceful Ood of the Ood sphere, and granted the Doctor didn't mean to kill it, but it didn't deserve to become dust now, did it? I propose we hold a moment's silence here for our poor, sweet, fallen Ood comrade. Okay, on to the next one. Number 9. Poisoning Dr Solen, the brain of Morbius. It's no secret that the Doctor possesses an immense amount of brain power. They're so smart that they could probably build the most devastating bomb in the universe in about 5 minutes flat. In fact, they've probably already done that, while simultaneously inventing the cheese grater. Thankfully, those two kind hearts keep their intentions mostly pure, but they have displayed the lethal capabilities of their genius intellect in the past. Like that time, the 4th Doctor created a deadly poisonous gas and used it to kill Dr Solen. The brain of Morbius finds the Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith clashing with Solen, who is attempting to create a new body to house the brain of Morbius, a rogue Time Lord. At one point, Solen seals the Doctor and his companion away, getting them out of his rather terrible hair so he can continue his work on Morbius uninterrupted. But if there's one thing that can't stop the Doctor, it's doors. Well, unless they're made of wood, of course. Though trapped with limited resources, the 4th Doctor puts his smarty pants to good use and crafts some poisonous gas before pumping it through a vent and killing Solen in an attempt to stop Morbius from rising. Okay, yes, this was a tricky situation. But couldn't he have built some knockout gas or something? We all know there's a dark streak lurking within the Doctor, but even so, this was a wee bit harsh. Number 8. Blowing up Solomon, dinosaurs on a spaceship. While investigating a Silurian spacecraft that's infested with a variety of dinosaurs, the Doctor stumbles across Solomon, a man who's trapped aboard the vessel due to his legs being mauled by raptors. Solomon is a nasty dude, which does make this particular kill not feel as bad as the others. He had previously killed all the Silurians in order to take the dinosaurs for himself and sell them off. He then takes Nefertiti and holds her hostage, intending to sell her on too. The Doctor obviously doesn't take a liking to him, and it's the Doctor who has the last laugh when he leaves Solomon to be blown up by a wave of missiles that had been fired by the Indian Space Agency. As is the case with most of these entries, there was almost certainly a less bloodthirsty way out of this. But then again, Solomon was a foul piece of work who needed to be taught a lesson in one way or another. We don't often see the Doctor go straight for the nuclear option like this, but it speaks to how even the Doctor, who always sees the good in people, couldn't even see a flicker of light inside Solomon's dark heart. Or, if you want to get really meta with it, maybe the 1st Doctor's new face in Twice Upon a Time was the universe's way of telling the Doctor he should have dealt with Solomon more peacefully. Perhaps. Number 7. Melting a pair of guards, Vengeance on Varos. In the 6th Doctor serial Vengeance on Varos, the Doctor's body is taken for disposal after he's thought to have died. Disposal here means a melting hot acid bath. It burns any flesh it comes into contact with, leaving its victims with no chance of survival. Fortunately, the Doctor isn't dead, and he wakes up before his body can be properly disposed of. The only problem is that there are 2 guards in the room with him. But wouldn't you know it, they're both stood right in front of the acid bath with their backs to the Doctor. So you can probably guess where this is going. Though some believe that the Doctor didn't actually push them into the acid and so shouldn't count as a murder, the fact remains that you don't startle two people who are stood so close to certain death unless you aren't at least half expecting them to get dunked. And the Doctor doesn't even try to talk the second guard down either. In fact, he wrestles him closer to the acid and tries to force him in. The Doctor could have easily sneaked past these guards without them being aware of him. But no, let them burn. Now, the Sixth Doctor had a bit more of a mean streak compared to the Doctors before or since, and fittingly, this won't be his final appearance on this list. Number 6, Deposing the Siccarak's leader, the Christmas Invasion. Poison and acid are all very well and good, but killing someone with a Satsuma takes some real mad skills, and the Doctor has those skills, apparently. David Tennant's first full episode as the 10th Doctor concluded with an epic sword battle on a spaceship high up in the sky, which resulted in him defeating his opponent with the mighty power of a small piece of fruit. With Earth being threatened by the Siccaraks, the Doctor, after enjoying a lengthy post-regeneration nap, had to step in. And full credit to him, he did give the Siccarak's leader the chance to surrender, to give up, to leave the Earth peacefully. This was a Doctor still finding his feet and still learning who he was, but the Doctor has always been and should always be a merciful being. And that doesn't change with number 10. But what if the villain refuses to accept that mercy? The Siccarak's leader discovered the answer to that question the hard way, as the 10th Doctor realises he's a man who doesn't give second chances, especially when he's got a Satsuma handy. It's one of those examples of the Doctor committing murder that feels more justified than the rest, as the Siccarak's leader clearly wasn't going to stop, so he had to be stopped. It's an act that set the 10th Doctor up as just as intense and cold as his 9th incarnation, but with a bit more of a god complex, an aspect of his personality he would reckon with right the way through to the end of his run. Number 5, shooting the General, Hellbent. Hellbent finds the Doctor in full-on I don't give a crap mode. After spending billions of years trapped inside his own confession dial, it was clear that he'd go to any lengths necessary to undo Clara's death, shattering his own rulebook and momentarily becoming something other than the Doctor. After using a Gallifreyan extraction chamber to pluck her from her time stream milliseconds before her death in Face the Raven, the Doctor is clearly struggling with what he knows he has to do next, which makes it all the more shocking when he takes that step. He attacks the General and steals his gun before shooting him down so he and Clara can escape. While the General obviously doesn't die here, it's an act that does end the life of that particular incarnation. We've heard varying accounts on what regeneration actually feels like in Doctor Who. Ask the 10th Doctor and he'll say it feels like dying, while the 12th Doctor tells Clara that Time Lord death is the equivalent of man flu. But either way, it's the Doctor's intent that really matters here, and he intends to get the General out of his way. The really interesting question is, if he was faced with someone who couldn't regenerate, would he still have pulled that trigger? It's also shocking to see Mr. Guns Are Bad turn a gun on someone and actually use it. The Doctor has used guns before, but there was something extra unsettling about seeing him murder a fellow Time Lord. This is a character who spent the first few years of the revival mourning the loss of his people and his home, and feeling immense guilt over his actions in the Time War. Viewed through that lens, this is a truly terrible act from the Doctor, and the fact that he spends so long pondering whether to shoot tells you he knows it. Number 4, Exterminating the God of Death, Empire of Death. There are some villains so evil and so powerful that the Doctor doesn't really have much choice other than to take their lives. The God of Death, Sutekh, more than fit that bill, having Thanos snapped the entire universe out of existence and leaving everyone and everything a pile of dust. Rather than accepting defeat and wandering the universe with a vacuum cleaner, the 15th Doctor concocts a plan to ensnare Sutekh and take the four-legged fiend for a walk through the time vortex. The Doctor understands what he needs to do next, but is devastated by what he must become, as he sends Sutekh into the time vortex to burn up and die. To be fair to the Doctor, there really wasn't any other way to deal with Sutekh other than to end him, and it's powerful to see our noble, peaceful hero, other than the moments on this list, apparently, reckon with his moral code in such a big way. Oftentimes, the Doctor kills people, Siccaraks, Ood, rather flippantly, or even accidentally, but this was a standout moment where we actually see the terrible effects that taking a life has on him, which worked really well for a more emotional Doctor like 15. Number 3, shooting an Ogrron, Day of the Daleks. It's well known that the Third Doctor was always a bit handy with his fists. Generally, however, Venusian Aikido was only ever used in self-defense. The same can't be said for his handiness with an Ogrron blaster in Day of the Daleks. Escaping the siege of Orderly House, the Doctor comes across two slow-moving Ogrons advancing on him. Watching the scene as broadcast, the Doctor has plenty of time to take another route, but he chooses not to. Instead, he turns the blaster on one of the Ogrons and vaporizes the poor thing. It's a shocking moment from a character who never tires of lecturing people on the merits of pacifism. Perhaps inspired by Star Wars' infamous Han shot first debate, this scene was re-edited for the 2011 special edition release. Some blaster effects were added coming from the Ogron's direction to suggest that the Third Doctor was indeed firing in self-defense. But we know the truth, don't we, Doctor? Number 2, a message for the Cybermen. A good man goes to war. There's some argument as to whether or not killing a Cyberman counts as taking a life, since they're mostly just emotionless voids fueled only by the desire to delete their enemies. Then again, they have proven capable of possessing a bit more humanity, albeit under exceptional circumstances. But even if you are of the mindset that they all deserve the cold abyss of death, the Doctor's explosive antics at the start of A Good Man Goes to War still feel like a bit much. The opening few minutes of the episode find the Doctor and Rory attempting to track down the recently kidnapped Amy Pond. Rory swaggers aboard a cyber ship and questions them about her location, informing them that he has a message from the Doctor to boot. When the Cybermen ask what this message is, the entire fleet of ships in the sky behind Rory explode in a massive ball of flame. To be clear, that's thousands of Cybermen gone in an instant, purely because the Doctor could almost definitely have found a less destructive way to send his message. At this stage, we don't know how angry and determined the Doctor was in this episode, though the Colonel Runaway speech would certainly inform us of that. The whole point of this story, and really the whole point of this arc, is that 11 has gone too far. So in a way, the fact that he needlessly blew up all those cyber ships was a perfect demonstration of that fact. As River, the best character, later informs him, some people in the universe think that Doctor means mighty warrior, and this was very much the actions of a warrior. Number 1. Suffocating Shokai, the Two Doctors. We've covered a lot of murder in this video, but for the most part, it's hands-off. The Doctor isn't grabbing people and throttling them or beating them to death with his bare hands. Although it would have been quite amusing to see 15 straight up battering Sutekh, let's be honest. However, there's one Doctor kill in the classic series that gets a lot more hands-on than the rest. And that's the moment in The Two Doctors when the 6th Doctor puts a bag over someone's head and suffocates them to death. The Doctor's victim here was Shokai, an androgram chef with a desire for human flesh. So he was most definitely a nasty piece of work who deserved a comeuppance in some shape or form. But that doesn't stop the fact that it's pretty crazy to see the Doctor, a beacon of peace and hope across the universe, smother Shokai with a bag and some cyanide like it's nothing. Like with Solen, couldn't he have just knocked him out? Or done anything else? The Doctor even delivers a cheesy quip when looking down at Shokai's dead body, almost as though he's proud of what he's just done. Forget the man who never would, this was a man who would and did and was actually quite chuffed about the whole thing. It feels very out of place for both the show and the character, and was indicative of the more graphic depictions of violence throughout the 6th Doctor's era. It's never not weird to see the Doctor commit murder, but this one was a lot more jarring than most. And that concludes our list. But for a show that is 60 plus years old, I'm sure we've missed some. So do let us know of any we missed in the comments down below, and we may just do a part 2. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.